You're coming with me. I'll not leave you here. I've got to save you.
You already have.
Return of the Jedi wasn't just the end of the original trilogy. It was a film that Spielberg legally couldn't direct, that Lynch ran away from after a salad lunch, that nearly killed Han Solo, and that was hidden from the world under a fake horror movie title. Directed by Richard Marquand and starring Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, Billy D. Williams, and Anthony Daniels, it grossed $482 million and closed one of cinema's greatest stories. Here are 14 facts you never knew. 14. The ending of toy sales killed. The film ends with the Empire defeated, Vader redeemed, and every surviving hero celebrating on Endor surrounded by Ewoks, euphoric, triumphant. Exactly what Lucas delivered. But producer Gary Kurtz, who produced both A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back alongside Lucas, went on record with the Los Angeles Times describing what the original outline actually said. Han Solo was to be rescued early in the film, then die mid-story. During a raid on an Imperial base, the rebels would win, but at enormous cost. Leia would be left grappling with the weight of leading a tattered alliance, and Luke, rather than celebrating, would walk away alone into the darkness, a solitary figure like Clint Eastwood in a spaghetti western. No Ewoks, no celebration, a bittersweet, poignant conclusion to an epic. Then the toy numbers arrived, Kurtz's exact words. George then decided he didn't want any of the principals killed. By that time, there were really big toy sales, and that was a reason. The ending that survived wasn't the one Lucas originally wrote. It was the one that kept Harrison Ford alive long enough to sell action figures. 13. The entire production was hidden behind a fake horror film. The production of Return of the Jedi operated entirely under a false identity. The film's working cover title was Blue Harvest, presented publicly as an upcoming low-budget horror film with the tagline, Horror Beyond Imagination. Fake merchandise was produced for the crew. T-shirts, caps, and production materials all bearing the Blue Harvest name. Location scouts used it to negotiate prices without triggering the Star Wars premium that vendors and local businesses would have charged the moment they recognized what was actually being filmed. The ruse worked until the main cast arrived on set, the moment Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, and Carrie Fisher walked onto location. The fiction collapsed entirely. Blue Harvest's cover was maintained in the official communications long enough to complete the most sensitive parts of production. The title was a play on Dashiell Hammett's 1929 novel Red Harvest, a private joke embedded in the world's most closely guarded film shoot. 12. Spielberg couldn't direct it because of a union dispute. George Lucas's first choice to direct Return of the Jedi was Steven Spielberg. Spielberg wanted the job. Lucas wanted him to have it. There was one insurmountable obstacle. During the production of The Empire Strikes Back, Lucas had violated Directors Guild of America rules by failing to credit director Irvin Kershner in the film's opening titles, while still crediting himself via the Lucasfilm logo. The DGA fined Lucas, and the situation deteriorated to the point where Lucas formally resigned from the Directors Guild. Under DGA rules, no guild member could work on a non-union production, which Lucasfilm now was, without facing penalties. Spielberg was a DGA member and could not accept the assignment without consequences to his union standing. The same dispute that had produced friction over The Empire Strikes Back directly prevented the most commercially successful director in Hollywood from closing out the trilogy. Lucas needed someone outside the DGA. The search went in a different direction. 11. David Lynch came close, then got a migraine and left. Among the directors Lucas approached before landing on Richard Marquand was David Lynch, whose 1980 film The Elephant Man had established him as one of the most distinctive directors working in American cinema. Lynch took a meeting at Lucasfilm. He was shown concept art and creature designs for the production. Lucas then drove him in his Ferrari to a vegetarian restaurant that served only salads. Lynch later described the experience as the point at which he got almost a migraine headache and could barely wait to get home. He turned down the assignment. The following year, he directed Dune, his own large-scale science fiction epic that was received so poorly, it effectively ended his relationship with studio filmmaking for a decade. Two men with completely incompatible creative instincts had briefly sat across from each other over a salad, and the outcome was predictable from the moment Lucas chose the restaurant. The Ewoks were originally Wookies. The Battle of Endor was not originally a Battle of Endor. Lucas's early concept for the trilogy's climactic ground engagement placed it on the Wookiee home planet Kashyyyk, a large-scale assault involving the galaxy's most physically formidable warrior species fighting alongside the Rebel Alliance. Wookiees are 7 feet tall, immensely strong, and carry crossbow-style weapons. The shift from Wookiees to Ewoks, small bear-like creatures that defeated Imperial stormtroopers with primitive technology, fundamentally changed the film's third act and its thematic argument. Lucas's stated reasoning was that a technologically primitive society defeating a mechanized military force was more interesting philosophically. His critics argued that Ewoks were more marketable as toys. Ralph McQuarrie, the production's principal concept artist, was so opposed to the direction the Ewok designs were taking that he removed himself from that specific design competition after submitting a handful of drawings he considered appropriate. He told the production that if they didn't like those, he was out. 9. Harrison Ford wanted Han Solo to die. Harrison Ford had not signed a contract to return for a third Star Wars film when The Empire Strikes Back was made. Han Solo's carbonite freezing at the end of that film was written specifically to accommodate the possibility that Ford might not come back in a narrative exit that didn't require his death. When he did agree to return for Return of the Jedi, Ford's creative position was consistent and direct. Han Solo should die. He argued for it to Lucas and to the producers on the grounds that it would give the character meaningful narrative weight and provide the trilogy with genuine emotional stakes in its final act. Lucas refused. The argument reflected a fundamental disagreement about what the film was for. Ford saw an opportunity for dramatic consequence. Lucas saw a film that needed to send its audience home satisfied. Ford accepted the decision and delivered the performance. Han Solo survived. Ford remained unconvinced it was the right call. 8. The title was changed because Jedi don't take revenge. The film's working title throughout most of its production and through a full promotional campaign, including printed posters, was Revenge of the Jedi. The title appeared on teaser posters that were distributed to theaters and collected by fans. Lawrence Kasdan had suggested it because he considered Return of the Jedi a weak title that lacked dramatic punch. Lucas agreed and adopted it. Then he reconsidered. His reasoning was simple and specific. A Jedi would not seek revenge. The entire philosophical framework of the Jedi tradition was built around transcending the emotional impulses that the dark side fed on. Revenge was a dark side motivation. A film ending with Luke Skywalker's redemption of his father and his own completion of the Jedi path could not be titled Revenge of anything. Lucas switched back to his original title. The Revenge of the Jedi teaser posters were recalled. The ones that survived the recall became some of the most prized collector's items in the franchise's history. 7. David Prowse was banned from the premiere. David Prowse had played the physical body of Darth Vader across all 3 original Star Wars films. He wore the suit, performed the movement, and brought the character's physical presence to every scene. By the time Return of the Jedi was in production, his relationship with Lucasfilm had deteriorated beyond repair. Prowse had publicly revealed plot details from The Empire Strikes Back before the film's release, whether through genuine knowledge or guesswork has been disputed. He had reportedly told a fan convention audience that Darth Vader was Luke's father months before the film opened. Lucasfilm never confirmed whether he actually knew or had simply guessed, but the damage to their trust in him was permanent. When Return of the Jedi had its premiere, David Prowse was not invited. The actor who had inhabited Vader's body for 3 films did not attend the event that closed the story. His face was never seen under the mask on screen. He wasn't in the audience either. 6. Lucas effectively directed the film himself. Richard Marquand is the credited director of Return of the Jedi. How much of the film he actually controlled is a question that production accounts have consistently complicated. George Lucas was present on set throughout production, not as an observer, but as an active creative authority. He supervised Marquand's decisions, reviewed footage daily, and directed significant portions of the second unit work himself. Marquand was a capable television director whose feature credits were modest, and multiple crew members have noted that Lucas's presence was so dominant that the distinction between producer and director was functionally blurred. Marquand himself acknowledged Lucas's authority openly, describing him as always there and always helping. The dynamic was not identical to the Nye-by-Hawks arrangement on The Thing from Another World, but the structural parallel is specific enough to have been noted repeatedly in production histories. Of both films, the credited director of Return of the Jedi directed it with the man who created the franchise standing at his shoulder making decisions, 5ILM. Ran 20-hour days, 6 days a week for months. Industrial Light and Magic had anticipated that Return of the Jedi would allow certain departments to reduce their workload and take on other projects. Between the trilogy's visual effects demands, the opposite happened. The moment production began, the scale of what the film required became clear. The Battle of Endor space sequences, the Emperor's throne room, and the multiplying demands of a production that had promised to raise the bar set by its two predecessors. ILM ran 20-hour days, 6 days a week for months. Staff who had planned to transition to other work found themselves locked into the production as the scope expanded continuously. The effects team that had built its reputation across 2 films was now being asked to produce more than either of those films had required in the same time frame, with the added pressure of closing a trilogy that audiences around the world were waiting for. The company ran itself to exhaustion to meet an April 1st, 1983 effects delivery deadline. The battle sequences that audiences watch in 2 hours cost months of 20-hour days to produce. 4. The Desert Shoot. Required 24-hour security and still failed the Sarlacc pit sequence. The sail barge battle over the pit of Carcoon was filmed in Buttercup Valley near Yuma, Arizona, under Blue Harvest's cover identity. The remote desert location was fenced off and guarded by 24-hour security to prevent photographers from capturing footage of the production. The security failed. Despite the perimeter and the round-the-clock presence of guards, several fans succeeded in sneaking through and photographing the set. Images of the sail barge and the production infrastructure circulated among fan communities before the film was released. The desert offered no natural barriers against determined enthusiasts with telephoto lenses and patience. A production that had invested significantly in secrecy, fake titles, fake merchandise, legal agreements, found that the Arizona desert offered less protection than an English soundstage. The sail barge photographs that appeared in fan publications months before the film opened are the documentation of a security operation that ran continuously and still wasn't enough. 3. The Ewoks were named after a real Native American tribe. The name Ewok was not invented arbitrarily. Lucas derived it from the Miwoks, a Native American people who had historically inhabited Marin and southern Sonoma counties in Northern California, the same region where Lucas had built Skywalker Ranch. The Miwok people's name means people in their language. Lucas removed the first letter and arrived at Ewok. The name appears nowhere in the finished film's dialogue. The creatures are never referred to by species name on screen. It exists in the production materials, the merchandising, and the subsequent Ewok animated series and television films. But audiences watching Return of the Jedi in theaters heard the word Ewok exactly 0 times. A name drawn from a real indigenous community was attached to the franchise's most merchandisable creation and then withheld from the film itself. The toys carried the name. The movie didn't. 2. Sebastian Shaw played both Anakin Skywalker and his ghost. The unmasking of Darth Vader, the moment Luke removes his father's helmet and sees the face underneath, required an actor who had never appeared in the franchise before. Sebastian Shaw, a distinguished British stage and screen actor in his late 70s, was cast to play the dying Anakin Skywalker in the sequence where Luke removes the helmet and the two men finally see each other. Shaw also appeared as Anakin's Force ghost in the film's closing celebration, the version of the character redeemed and at peace. It was Shaw's only Star Wars appearance. When Lucas produced the DVD release of the original trilogy, he digitally replaced Shaw's Force ghost with Hayden Christensen, the actor who had played young Anakin in the prequel films. Shaw, who died in 1994, had no opportunity to respond to the substitution. The face that audiences saw in 1983 in the trilogy's most important emotional beat was replaced in every subsequent home release with someone else. Shaw's version is the one that belongs to the original film. It is no longer the one most people see. 1. The film was released exactly 6 years after the original Return of the Jedi opened in North American theaters on May 25th. 1983, Star Wars had opened on May 25th. 1977, the date was not a coincidence. Lucasfilm scheduled the release deliberately 6 years to the day after the film that had started everything, closing the story on its own anniversary. The choice was a statement about what the trilogy was and what it had meant. A franchise that had changed cinema, changed merchandising, changed what audiences expected from summer blockbusters, and changed the lives of everyone involved in making it arrived at its conclusion on the same calendar date it had been born. Whatever happened in the years that followed, the special editions, the prequels, the sequels, the expanded universe, the original story ended exactly where it began, on the same day of the same month, 6 years apart. George Lucas had opened a door in 1977. He closed it on the same date in 1983. The symmetry was the last thing he controlled completely, and there you have it. 14 weird facts about Return of the Jedi, a film hidden behind a fake horror movie directed by a man with Lucas at his shoulder that almost killed Han Solo, replaced Wookies with Ewoks, and closed the original trilogy on the exact anniversary of its beginning. Which fact hit hardest? Drop it in the comments. Subscribe for more deep dives into the films that ended eras. Until next time,